paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jenn Dorrell.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm one of your hosts, Dean Bertram, and joining me tonight is the always amazing, spectacular, beautiful, and super smart Jenn Dorrell.
Good evening.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And to everybody watching. And this is the funny part for those of you watching. This is how stupid I am. I went to get a green hat because it's St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
And I have an old kind of promo MidWest WeirdFest hat for the festival that I run in Eau Claire that just wrapped last week. Pulled that on. And then, of course, we use green screen technology here on the Untold Radio Network. I didn't even think about it. So my head, wherever it's green, is kind of just disappearing into the background. So I won't make the audience suffer it the whole night. And look at your flashing lights.
Yeah, I'd had the same thing too. Mine are green, so you can't even tell they're green. They're just blinking gray.
It looks like a bad effect on like an old Doctor Who episode or something. Some old 1970s British TV science fiction.
Little shamrocks.
Fantastic. I might even swap my hat out now while you can talk about your shamrocks, I guess.
My shamrocks? There's nothing special about my shamrocks. Switching the hat.
You lost me for a minute. I had to take my headphones off.
Yeah.
I do like them though, the flashing shamrocks.
Well, they're a little distracting. So
yes, you probably need to turn them off and take them off, I guess, just like I had to do with my hat. Speaking of MidWest WeirdFest, that festival just wrapped. Now we're going to talk about some St. Patrick's Day goodness, but we only just press released the winners of MidWest WeirdFest today. We're actually doing a pre-record. So we're recording on St. Patrick's Day proper. You're watching probably this on the 18th, people watching it live, but we're recording on St. Patrick's Day because it's St. Patrick's Day. So why not? So I thought I'd just go over the winners of the festival very quickly because you were there. You got to see some of the films, maybe not all of them, but you got to see some. You got to meet a bunch of the filmmakers. Did you enjoy the festival, by the way?
Yes, I loved it. I had fun.
That's good. It was a fun festival. So the winner of the I don't think I've talked about this yet. Have I talked about the Palme d'Or yet on Talking Weird?
Not on Talking Weird. I don't think you have.
No, I think on Mysterious Library, the show that I do with Jason McLean Tuesdays at 9 p.m. We talked about it. But we introduced an award this year at the festival. I talked to you about it. I talked to Jason about it. I'd spoken to a friend in Hollywood, a producer, Stephen Wallace, about it. And we wanted to kind of increase awareness, I suppose, or at least memorialize the memory of Raymond Palmer. Now, people who watch this show and Mysterious Library might even be getting sick of hearing me talk about Ray Palmer. Of course, Ray Palmer was a famous editor of pulp magazines in the 1940s, particularly Amazing Stories, which he increased the circulation above and beyond any other pulp in that space at the time through clever editing style, through good choices, and particularly through something called the Shaver Mystery, where he introduced a series of stories, some of which early on he helped ghostwrite. I believe later they were less ghost written by Ray Palmer, but stories from a man called Richard Shaver, who claimed he'd had experiences with this malevolent underground race with this advanced technology who tampered in the lives of humans, sometimes abducted them, had been living under the surface for millennia. And they were called the Deros. There was also a good race called the Teros. Anyway, this predated UFO belief. So when UFO belief dropped in 1947, or when people started seeing flying saucers, at least in 1947, Palmer and Shaver said, aha, this is kind of proof of this advanced technology we've been talking about. Richard Shaver has written about the flying saucers before, and sure enough, on the cover of Amazing Stories, long before Kenneth Arnold's famous sighting in June of 1947, there'd been illustrations of what were literally flying saucers. Anyway, long story short, Raymond Palmer in many ways has been all but forgotten. Sci-fi fandom had problems with the way that he edited, with his selection of stories, which were more Buck Rogery type stories, adventures and action fights and, beautiful women and crazy space adventures. They wanted more of a hardcore science fiction based on science. And later on, the UFO community in many ways didn't like some of Palmer's early suggestions, where he was suggesting ETs might come from, or not ETs, flying saucers might come from below the earth, or they might be spiritual. He always was quite open-minded and looked at all these different alternatives. And I think he was a bit of a contrarian as well. He liked to have disagreements with people. So in a way, he was written out of the official UFO history and also written out of the official science fiction history. I found out when I moved here, even having been aware of Ray Palmer for years and having written about his significance in my PhD dissertation, I certainly wasn't the first person to note this. People like John Keel had noted it. Donald Menzel, the great skeptic, had noted it. Even the FBI back in the day thought Richard Shaver and Ray Palmer had invented flying saucers. But that said, when I moved here to Wisconsin, I found out he lived down the road from me for a large chunk of the last 25 years of his life or something, as did Richard Shaver for about 10 years. So I kind of almost took it upon myself, with the collaboration of talking to you again and Jason and Steve, that if we introduced an award at MidWest WeirdFest recognizing Ray Palmer, it would be a way to memorialize him when so many people have forgotten him. So we introduced Palmer d'Or. This is becoming a very long story, but the Palmer d'Or was to recognize excellence in the field today and also to memorialize essentially Ray Palmer and recognize excellence in the field. When I say the field, I mean both science fiction and the paranormal and UFO belief, because Palmer was central to the development of lots of things in this space. Anyway, this year, Melissa Tittl, who people might know as a producer for several years of Ancient Aliens, she's also obviously one of the hosts on UFO Witness. We had her on the show. I think it was the second show we did on Untold Radio. Is that right? We had Melissa
I think so too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she came to the festival with the world premiere of her new film Code 12, which kind of suggests we're living in perhaps a simulation, or reality is a little more complicated. She talks to various researchers and scientists and fascinating movie. Anyway, she was awarded the inaugural Palmer d'Or. Yes. So that is the first winner. I'll try to go through the rest quicker. Mark Polish's film Murmur. I've been a big fan of Mark Polish for years. Won Best Film. Kick Me from your neck of the woods, from Kansas City, Kansas. Won Best Director for Gary Huggins. Mm-hmm. Accidental Truth from Ron James and MUFON. And I've had Ron James on talking about Accidental Truth not that long ago. That won Best Documentary. Fantastic. Just a cutting edge kind of wrap up. If you want to know what's the developments in recent UFO thought and recent UFO machinations, it's just a top documentary. We will premiere it. Hopefully it'll get a release soon. I think it's going to be the most important UFO documentary of this year. Best Horror Film was won by Follow Her from director Sylvia Kaminer, who came to the festival. Mm-hmm. She's an Emmy Award winning director. I think she's won a couple of Emmys. Just a fantastic twisting horror film. That was also the fest's closing night film. Hundreds of Beavers, which I know you enjoyed, right? Mm-hmm. Just hilarious. Won Best Comedy Film. The Diabetic won Best Experimental Film. This kind of lo-fi drama about a diabetic's night that just spirals as he kind of wants to relive the crazy antics of his youth. Fantastic movie. Logger, very nightmarish film from Belgium, won Best International Film. Bigfoot and Marty. I had Ronnie Ferguson on Talking Weird, and Jason and I also talked about the film Bigfoot and Marty on Mysterious Library, so people can go back and check either of those episodes. That won Independent Spirit Award, rightly so. It's a really heartfelt, fantastic documentary about Marty Akatz, who's Michigan, the UP, which is in Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. That area is poet laureate, and he's also got a fascination with Bigfoot. It also features people from the Bigfoot community, like Ken Gerhard, for example, in a great documentary. That won, again, the Independent Spirit Award, and it was the world premiere at MidWest WeirdFest. Break, spelt B-R-A-E-K, won Best Male Performance for Kevin Interdonato's fantastic performance of this menacing home invader. And Kevin came to the festival. He also co-wrote that film with the director John Fallon. Best female performance was won by Senny Pretty from the amazing Australian film Your Love Is Mine, which we did the international premiere for. Welcome to Kitty Town, which is just this hilarious post-apocalyptic buddy movie, won Best Supporting Male Performance for Robert Bryn Mann, which is just an amazing movie. Break also had another win, Best Supporting Female Performance for Alex Lane, who plays the traumatized, damaged teenage daughter in that movie. She's just fantastic. And we mightn't go through all the shorts, but there's so many fantastic films. One other short I'll mention 2 shorts because we've had guests on Talking Weird from those films before. The Conspiratologist won Best Documentary Short, which is about the life of conspiracy researcher and UFO researcher Norio Hayakawa, just a fascinating human being who, again, he's been a guest on Talking Weird, and Jason and I discussed that film on Mysterious Library a couple of weeks ago. You can actually watch that film now on Vimeo, so go and check out The Conspiratologist. It's free on Vimeo. It's like a 30-minute documentary. It's amazing. And also Fred Chrisman, Cave of the Space Nazis, from Brian Shickley, who I've also had on Talking Weird. Just an hilarious animation which deals with Ray Palmer, of all people, and Richard Shaver, and the titular character Fred Chrisman fighting Deros, those underground evil alien type beings I mentioned before. An amazing documentary. So that's an amazing animation, rather. So that's just some of the films. And I know you loved, mind you loved the music video, which won Best Music Video, right?
Yes, that was a really cool one. I like that one. Fantastic.
Let's Eaten by Andrew Paul Davis. Anyway, I think there's something like 26 awards. People should go and check them out on MidWestWeirdFest.com if they're interested. That's the wrap up of the awards of the festival.
Yeah.
What was your highlight? Yeah, what was your highlight of the festival?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch all of the movies because we were so busy. But I enjoyed sitting down and watching Night of the Cooters.
That one Best Short Film. Night of the Cooters is fantastic. Vincent D'Onofrio stars and directs. Elias, who is another star and producer, Gallegos is how you pronounce his last name. I might have got that wrong. He came to the festival, and it's it's executive produced by George R.R. Martin, the creator of Game of Thrones. So it was wonderful at the festival to hear feedback from George, who was not there but watching afar, how excited he was, and he was sharing photos and things. Just that was pretty exciting. Great movie. Not out yet, so people going to. I like. So Western War of the Worlds mashup kind
awesome.
of. And it's I don't think it's rotoscope, but it's some kind of animation on top of live action. Yeah. Very clever. D'Onofrio's great in that as well. My goodness, he's so good. So good. Just fantastic. We were going to talk about St. Patrick's Day, though, originally. That was our first intention when you said, hey, let's just talk about St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, I know. So, I mean, a lot of people don't even know what St. Patty's Day is even about. I mean, it is more of an American holiday, right? So everybody just thinks it's just a day to celebrate the Irish.
That's kind of what it is here, and drink green beer, right? Or maybe that's in Sydney. Do they put food?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the way it is in America too. So, I ended up trying to look it up a little bit, and there's just so many different stories about St. Patrick's Day. I think it was first celebrated in America, and I think it was 1601, and that was in St. Augustine, Florida.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And then they said that the Irish, they didn't really have a parade until 1903. So it's more of an American holiday.
Huh.
Yeah. And the St. Patrick person that it's named after is not even Irish.
I did know that. He's British originally, right? I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't he captured or something? He was an aristocrat from Britain back in the 4th century or 5th. I don't know. When was it? Was it the 400s, 500s? It was well over 1,500 years ago. Do you know the date?
Yeah,
And
1400s, I think.
no,
AD,
I think like the
something.
400s or 500s, right? Like it was pre-medieval. It was
Well,
like
no, well, it depends on what video you watch, but I had down 1460 something AD, but who knows?
really? No,
Hmm.
It was much before that.
Okay, you look it up.
I'm gonna have to now. You put me on the spot, but I
Mhm.
mean, I think it was like 400 something, right? Like
Oh, that's serious.
this is like when the Roman Empire is kind of bleeding out. So Christianity hasn't taken over Europe yet. That's what he's so famous about. By the 1500s, as far as I'm aware, all of Europe
Yeah.
was pretty much Christian. When St. Patrick
Right, but
was
yeah.
snatched, I don't think he was a Christian at first. Yeah, he was born 385 AD and he died 461 AD.
Yeah. So the video I watched obviously didn't know what they were talking about. Who knows? There's so much different information on the internet. So
who knows? That's very true. But essentially what happened is he was a British aristocrat who was captured, I believe, and kind of and turned into a slave by these Irish marauders. And I don't think he was a Christian originally, as far as I'm aware. I think he kind of converted to Christianity when he was in enslavement and had these spiritual experiences. And then, of course, there's all these legends which have risen up around him, like with most of the saints. You can read any book about, a famous saint, and normally you can't tell what's real and what's not real. But perhaps one of the things he's best known for is driving the snakes out of Ireland, right?
Yeah, but there's no snakes in Ireland.
Yeah, apparently it was too cold for snakes.
Okay, so hang on a second. So I was watching some other stuff too. So there's a lot of mythology, Celtic mythology. So a lot of people had mentioned that since there's no snakes in Ireland, and it makes no sense, that story, there was a mythological creature that was like a snake. And so some of the stories are that he actually conquered that creature. And that's the snake they're talking about. I can't pronounce the name. I think I have it written down here somewhere.
Like a reptoid or something, a reptilian?
Yeah, the names are so hard to say.
Is it an Irish name?
Querthania, something like that.
I don't actually know.
But it was some female that could be turns herself into a snake or some other creature too at the same time. But I guess that's the metaphor for driving the snakes out. I don't know.
Wow, like Devil Woman or something.
Yeah,
I wrote a screenplay once about a woman who was a reptoid.
Really?
A feature screenplay, yeah.
Doesn't Medusa have the snakes on her head too?
No, it was kind of a comedy, but she was a reptoid.
Oh, a reptoid.
Go figure. Long story. It's a misspent youth, I guess. But also there is, I think the more traditional explanation is that the snakes represent paganism. So he converted Ireland to Christianity and as a result drove out the pagans. And of course, pagans get quite upset about the holiday. Like I see other people, I saw pagans sharing St. Patrick's Day stuff.
Well, yeah, because he's the one that brought the Christianity over to this. He was supposedly the reason for it was to save the savages, and that's the same thing that happened in America. So, if you think about it,
yeah,
with Christianity.
Well, in some ways.
Yes. Well, yeah.
In some ways, I suppose. And of course, one thing I think I knew when I'd forgotten and then I relearned today when I was doing a little bit of research is the Irish symbol of the clover apparently became so potent because it was meant to represent Patrick's dissemination of the idea of the Trinity. So the three-leaf clover represents, God the Son and the Holy Spirit. And of course, Catholicism was, and it remains, I believe, the primary religion.
I think it is Roman Catholic.
Ireland. It's interesting though. I didn't know that America was the first place to celebrate it. So you're positive about, or you're fairly sure about that? I honestly don't know. I have no idea.
According to a couple of videos that I watched that were talking about it. So
interesting.
I don't know. I probably should have Wikipedia'd it or something.
You can't even trust Wikipedia.
No, you can't. Anyway. Or the internet.
It's funny that you said it was in Florida, though. I would have imagined it was in like New York or Boston or somewhere we traditionally think of as having fairly large Irish populations.
It is odd, and I kind of wonder if that's even correct. So 1601, like.
Maybe that was there might have been some French Catholic influence there in 1601. I don't think there would have been a big Irish Catholic influence in 1601. I don't know.
I don't know. A lot of Irish fled to the Americas, so I don't know.
Well, I think the big Irish intake is because of the potato famine, which is much later, right? Like a lot of Irish fled during the potato famine, and I think that's when America got its biggest Irish intake. Again, this is somebody who's...
I don't even know what year that was.
It was much later than 1601, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I thought 1601 was pretty crazy too. I wrote it down and I'm like, there's just no way. 1601? I don't know.
I'm plugging in potato famine. These are things I should know, but I actually don't.
Well, if you don't.
Ireland is great. Yeah, it was between 1845 and 1852. So yeah, a couple of hundred years later. And that I believe coincides with the first great waves of Irish immigration to the United States of America.
Okay. Who knows? Maybe they meant 1801 and I just wrote the wrong thing down.
We're all learning together. It's funny how these Irish symbols become almost like that. I don't know. I wonder, maybe they love it. I wonder if you were a traditional old-fashioned Irish person, what you would think of people dressed in weird little green leprechaun hats.
I think they find it comical because they said that the color isn't green either. Like it was blue or something for St. Patrick's Day, or St. Patrick always wore blue, not green, or something like that. I don't know.
Get out. Tell me a little bit more about that. That's fascinating.
That's all I remember them mentioning. So
that is interesting.
I can't give you much about it. I should know some of this because I am Irish, but I'm from America, so I don't know the culture well enough.
Well, we both have Celtic blood running through our veins. That might be where we get on.
I'm Welsh too.
I think I'm predominantly Scottish, but I think there's some Irish in there. It's the same thing anyway. It's the Celts.
Yeah.
There was this, I think originally, ironically, the Celts, I think, come from more centrally Europe. And then there was this kind of immigration over.
Okay, yeah. So I watched a little video about that. And they were saying that they are mainly from North Africa and Middle East. They went over there.
Really?
Ancient. Yeah. So I don't think I wrote this down. So there's a video on YouTube where they had recently found a grave, and inside the grave was an ancient Egypt prince.
And where was the grave? Where the ancient Egypt prince was?
It was in Ireland somewhere, and I guess the area that it was in was actually some type of royalty or whatever. So they were a little surprised to find that type of grave.
Oh.
So there's more people that have put out more information on YouTube stating that that's where a lot of the Irish was from that. So you'll find a lot of Irish people that have the dark eyes and the dark hair.
Like me, even though I was Scottish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A funny thing is, I think sometimes when you do ancestral DNA stuff, supposedly I've never done it, but you can find you have bloodlines from all over. Like you can have a family story that you're from here, but then it ends up you've got things from, all over the place. So who knows? I mean, my family story is kind of a Scottish, British, French one, but I've never done a DNA test. So who the devil knows?
Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to do one. I should do it.
Of course. It's a weird, the weird thing as well. We should both do it. That's something we should do for fun.
Yeah.
And read the results on Talking Weird.
Mm-hmm. I've traced my history, but I haven't gone too far, like 1500s or anything. I don't know anything that far.
See, here's the thing. If you have, and everybody does, if you have one female in your line who had an indiscretion with somebody other than a husband, it changes your entire line. It changes the entire history of your, what you might think your genetics are from what's talked about the official history. If your great-grandmother had actually been with somebody else, sounds horrible, but it means that your family genetic history might be entirely different to what you have been told that it is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, if you look at the history of humanity, how many times have there been those indiscretions? And have things been so mixed up? But you know what does fascinate me on a slightly more metaphysical and weird level, talking about Ireland and talking about Celtic migrations and other migrations, is, of course, in fact, I've heard contradictions, but one of the popular versions of Irish mythology is there isn't so much a creation myth as there's a myth of ongoing replacements via hostile migrations. So the Celts, the Gaelic people, are the last kind of migration there. And before that, you have the Tuatha Dé Danann, the fair folk, what supposedly became the fair folk, battling a previous, I suppose, race of people who lived there. And then the Gaels came, the Celts
giants,
came,
by the way.
The Tuatha Dé Danann?
No.
Or what are they, the Forimi? How do you pronounce that? I don't want to even try.
Yeah. Meridian?
Yeah.
Meridian?
They're the pre-Tuatha Dé Dananns.
Yeah. Yeah. There was that. So like there was all these different stories where they were there first. And then I guess the blog, BOLG, were there as well when they had showed up. And so they all kind of had a battle for their rights to the land. So there was a lot of fighting. And then it even said that how do you say it? Did you say Tuatha Dé Danann? Or isn't it Tuatha? I don't know.
It looks like Tuatha Dé Danann or something.
Yeah,
but I think different people pronounce it differently. I think it's Tuatha Dé Danann, but I've heard different versions. And I've mispronounced it many times. I think it's Tuatha Dé Danann, but you could pronounce it Tuatha Dé Danann or something.
I've heard that. Like I watched a couple of videos before and I'm like, wait a minute, each person said it differently. So what's the correct way? But no, they even mentioned that they interraced with the Fomoranians. So I don't know. It's interesting to watch.
Normally the history of conquest is the history of people intermingling.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if that ancient Irish tradition is based on some type of memory of brutal waves of invading immigrants. That there would have been people intermarrying between the different waves of people who came to Ireland.
Yeah. But they were more like the dark supernatural creatures, though. They're the ones that are from the sea. And so they had to kind of get them back into the sea or get them away so that way they could take that land. But they were supposedly giants.
Mm-hmm. The Fomoranians, or however we pronounce it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's all difficult to pronounce. But of course, the Tuatha Dé Danann is where we get the idea of the fair folk from.
Yeah.
That they went underground. They came to some kind of impasse, or they were defeated by the Gaels. And the modern Irish, I suppose, took the above ground area of Ireland, and the Tuatha Dé Danann took the below ground, or perhaps they went to a space just beside, like the Fairy Hills and the fords.
Right, like the mounds where they would, bury the dead is what a couple of the videos said that was kind of the areas that they went to. But they also said that they were considered more like fallen angels.
Well, there's those theories as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's one of the popular theories. You're absolutely right. And Eddie Lenihan, who we still have to have on this show, he said he would do the show, and we have to work out a time we can book him. We should have done him for St. Patrick's Day, maybe next year. Yeah. But he tells the wonderful story, and I'm not even going to try to tell it because he tells it. People should go and find on YouTube Eddie Lenihan telling this story where he says that they opened the kind of the floor, like at the bottom of heaven, they opened the kind of floor and so Satan would fall, and then so many angels started falling. Mike was like to God, we've got to close the doors, and they closed the doors. And then when they close it, whatever angels are still in heaven, and angels is a misnomer anyway, but let's use the traditional language, whatever angels in heaven stay in heaven, and whatever angels have gone to hell are now in hell, and whatever angels are in between, that's where they stay. So in Ireland, for example, if some had landed in lakes or in lochs or whatever they might call them in Ireland, what is the name for it? It's lochs in Scotland. What's the name for a lake in Ireland? There's probably a name. If they were in the waters of Ireland, that's where they would have stayed. They would have become the fair folk of the waters. And if they were, in the woods, they would have been the fair folk of the woods. And they'd been on, the hills, they would have been the fair folk of the hills. But yes, that the type of supernatural beings that we talk about as fairies are a result of that fall, which is fascinating. And that might be a comedic way of dealing with the genuine descent that you and I have talked about a number of times of some type of watchers being, you know, thrown out of or not able to return to their place in heaven because of things they had done on earth that they shouldn't. So it fits in, it does fit in biblically. But then there are other older traditions, which are just the idea of competing waves, and again, eventually the gales defeat or come to an impasse with the previous race that lived in Ireland, and as a result, you get the fair folk. So there are these different stories about what actually happened.
Yeah,
so, fascinating though, all of it.
They even mentioned like there's 2 wars in between them too. The different beings.
Tell me about that.
Well, I'm horrible. Like I just watched a couple videos. There was so they mentioned the 3 that we talked about, the Forminians, and then the Tuatana. I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly.
I never know either.
Okay. And so they had mentioned that there was this other creature that came about that ended up fighting. Yeah, I'm no good at this. So that creature had like one eyeball. So he's a mythological creature. And I think I've seen movies with him before.
Like a Cyclops in Greek or Roman mythology.
Yeah. And so it was him fighting with another one of the Forminians, I guess, trying to battle who was going to get the land, that kind of stuff.
Huh. That's interesting because the Cyclops might be related to the Titans in Greek mythology, and they kind of predate the gods. So there's a few traditions which line up with the Irish one, that there are an earlier race of other supernatural beings that then fight a later race of supernatural beings.
So I looked back and I found it. So it was the Tuatana, or however you said it. And so their first king was Brett's or something like that, I guess. And he was half Forminian. And I think that's the one that ends up becoming Baltar or something. So they call him Evil Eye. And then Lug, or Lugh, he was also a Forminian as well. And so that's the one he fought. And that's the first war. The second war, see if I can find it in here. It's more well known, though. I think that's when it's who gets to stay with the Tuatana, but I don't remember who won it, though. And I don't have my papers, though. I'm horrible. Well, we'll have to get somebody on here that knows all this stuff, because I'm not the best person.
I mean, I love this stuff. I'm not either, but of course the Tuatana actually means the children of Danu, right? Or the children of Dana, or not sure how you pronounce it. Like there was a goddess and they were meant to be the descendants of. I think that's literally the translation of Tuatana, right? Children of Dana. I'm probably mispronouncing even Danu, but I can't see you've leaned off.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read. Sorry.
Okay. I'm like, where's Jen going?
I'm so blind.
Oh, tell me about it. I have readers here as well. My goodness.
But no, one of them that I watched said that there was there was an actual gene in most Irish people that links them to gigantic, giants. Can't say the right word. Yeah, so it said there's a genetic origin to that, and it's an AIP gene.
Huh.
So there's several of them that have that, so it links into giantism.
That's interesting. You know, in one of the Whitley Strieber books, I think it's like Transformational Breakthrough, one or two after communion, he references some book that's never been published, but he'd read the paper of somebody who'd translated allegedly extraterrestrial grey language, like type of beings that supposedly abducted Whitley, and it was Gaelic. That's whether that's all just like not true. It's fascinating, the idea, because it has that then connection to the fair folk and the type of genetic things that you're talking about. And you said you're Irish. Look how haunted you are by weird things.
I know it. And I was kind of worried about even looking up all this stuff today and then talking about it today. Because then I'm like, oh, great.
You think they're going to come there?
There we go.
You just don't like to know?
Why not? Everything else does.
So you're expecting like What do you think will come?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've had like little tricksters and stuff here before, and then I had that vision of that one thing that popped up. It was just the craziest thing.
Tell us that story.
And I thought
not everybody's probably heard.
I don't even remember what I was doing. I was in my bed and reading or something like that, and I don't know, just getting ready to turn the lights off or something. And as I leaned over to put everything down and was getting ready to go over to this side of the bed to get out of, I saw a vision of a being looking up at me. And it really stuck with me for several days, because I even was like searching the internet, trying to find the right thing to look fairly close to it. And
what did it look like?
I have a picture somewhere, but I'm not going to search for it now. But it had the kind of the normal goblin-esque type creature-looking face, like a little earthbound spirit. Just, you would see a possible fae, I guess, would look like, but more of a goblin-esque one. So I was trying to figure out what type, because there's like a huge list of different types of fae folk. So I think it made me kind of think of a picture I saw of the knockers.
Tell me about the knockers, like the Tommy knockers.
I don't know that much about them, but they're just called that. They're more trickster types. And so when I play around with my ghost tube, it's automatic. Anytime I get poke that pops through, it'll start going negative automatically. So I just assume it's one of those.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the goblin thing you saw is similar to the thing that used to disturb me when I was younger. I'm like, again, I've often said it might just have been a bad dream, but something goblin-esque consistently visited me when I was about 5.
Yeah.
And I wonder if my Gaelic bloodline has something to do with that. And yours has something to do with your visitations.
I don't know. Hopefully you can't hear that train.
Oh, there's a big train going through there.
I can mute.
I was only watching the Waltons with my daughter the other day. She's back into the Waltons again, which is great. And John Boy hears the train in the distance, and he always gets kind of, toey, I guess, like he wants to be traveling, like he feels. Well, toey has different meanings. One of the meanings is that you're kind of, you're just restless and you want to be doing something. And he says that whenever he hears the train whistle, and I guess if you lived in a rural area and you never traveled anywhere, that particularly back in the 30s, that train whistle would have been like,
oh, well, yeah.
Where's this thing going?
Mm-hmm. I used to be able to hear the train all the way when I lived on that farm for a while. Just in the middle of nowhere, you'd hear the train, and the train's like 15 miles the other directions. It's kind of crazy when you get to hear it.
Oh, I love a train whistle. And see, those kind of, the idea of hearing a train whistle, particularly back in the day where you were isolated, isn't unrelated to the fairy stuff we're talking about, because so much of that legend was able to develop because people did stay in rural areas. They were very much in touch with their own surroundings and the mysteries of their surroundings. And some of these things have disappeared, I think, in modernity. How many people really, truly believe in the Tuatha today, or the fair folk today?
I think there's several people.
I think there are some people in the field, and there's probably some old school people in Ireland, but as I'm talking about as a broad belief system, like it would have been in Ireland 100 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I still believe. If Ed Schultz was listening, he'd make a Peter Pan reference.
He gets you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you should see my front lawn. It's full of little fairies, because my daughter loves stuff like that. And but I'm obsessed with gnomes. So I have fae folk all over my front lawn. Like, I can't go, like, where I work at a decor store in town, and we have gnomes everywhere. And it's like, why? Because then it's like, I have to pick one. I can't take them all, because like I will be totally in debt because I just want them all because they're so cute. But those are just figurines. But I like to have my front lawn kind of whimsical and Fantasyland.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Do you think in the order of ethereal beings there are different ones? Like, do you think there is a difference between the fair folk or the fairies and the gnomes and the pixies, or do you think they're just different interpretations of the same type of beings?
Oh, I don't know. They could be, but they all do different things, because not all of them are tricksters. A lot of them are there to teach you lessons and stuff. At least that's what I've read. So.
And there's like things like house brownies that supposedly help you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But didn't we have one last year at MidWest WeirdFest that was about house brownies?
Oh, we had that movie where they got annoyed and they planned to destroy the whole world or something.
That was a cool one. I can't remember the name of it.
I think it was vague. It was vague.
The Good Neighbors.
Is that what it was called? Okay.
The Good Neighbors. Yeah.
A short film. Because we did the fairy short program last year at the festival.
Yeah. Yeah, the Changeling. That was freaky.
Yeah, there's something which really resonates with these stories. I think it's because we remember. I wonder if it resonates cross-culturally. Like, I wonder if it resonates with you and I so much because that's a part of our ancestral memory. Or I wonder if it resonates with people regardless of where they're actually from. You know, like maybe their legends from their land resonate with them. I know Jung talked about collective unconsciousness. But he also, I think, talked about specific racial memories, like certain groups had traditions which impacted them more. I wonder if that's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated. I mean, I have no idea. I'm just
well, me growing up, we never talked about stories like that because I grew up in a Baptist family, so we just didn't talk about things like that.
But you might have had ancestral. You might have had some kind of like deep DNA memory. Is what I'm saying.
Could be, because I mean, even when I was a little kid, I was always digging in the earth looking for the people that lived underneath it.
Get out, really?
Yeah, I was obsessed. Like, I always thought when I got older I was going to be an archaeologist or something, because that's what I would do. If I had no friends to play with, I was digging in the ground looking for the other world.
You were looking for the Dorrell shaver style.
I didn't know what I was looking for. I just thought for sure. And then one time I found some glass. I might have been with my cousin. I don't know if my cousin Leslie remember this or not, but I did it with her too. And we were digging, and I remember saying, look, there's glass. Like, is that another world? I always thought there was one underneath us.
Wow.
But we couldn't break it. It was a big piece. It was a big piece of glass. I don't even know what it was. And I didn't dig that far. I mean, it was just probably just randomly placed there. But
you know, I had a weird dream once. I don't know if I've ever talked about this dream because it seems so irrelevant, but you know how sometimes you have some dreams and they seem significant, and you have some dreams and it's just ridiculous. Like you're back in high school and you forgot to wear your pants and you're in your underwear and it's the final exam and you're running late or something. Like there's those kind of ridiculous kind of dreams, right?
Yeah.
And then there's dreams which seem to have some, I don't know, some big resonance. I had a dream once and it seemed to have some broader, almost revelatory or apocalyptic significance. And it was that a farmer dug up some cable and then people realized there was this weird cable network under the whole planet. Like it was this crisscrossing, almost spiderweb thing just below. Now, I don't actually think there's a crisscrossing spiderweb cable thing, but maybe that is tapping into some older tradition, the same way as when you were little and you were digging and you thought there was something under there. The same way when Richard Shaver heard voices from under there, or when Richard Shaver dug out rocks and cut them in half and thought they were rock books which told an ancient history, like an Atlantean type history, by cutting a rock in half and then looking at it and seeing what he thought were figures in there. There's been this history of people looking below the earth and back to Ireland again, because it's St. Patrick's Day. The idea that the fair folk lived in the forts, the fairy forts, and the hills, or beneath the fairy forts and beneath the hills.
Mm-hmm.
There is something potent about the idea of a subterranean species coexisting with us.
Oh, yeah. There's tons of stories. I mean, if you want to talk about aliens too, that's another thing.
Yeah. Your underground bases, underground alien bases. In fact, in the film we played at MidWest Fest this year from Ron James, Accidental Truth, which won Best Documentary, and hopefully will be available for everybody to see in the not too distant future. It gets to the stage in that movie where finally ufology, and again, this is from MUFON, which is the biggest, most significant private or civilian, UFO investigation group in the world, which never would have talked about these more strange metaphysical type things, that maybe that some of these things are on Earth, beneath the Earth itself, beneath the waters. Hal Puthoff, who's one of the founders of To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge, wrote a paper, I think, last year called, I don't know, like the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis or something. Not speaking about ultra-terrestrial so much the way perhaps John Keel talked about them being like a weird energy type thing, but that there was something here potentially on this Earth. He didn't say this was for sure, but he presented, how do you look potentially at discovering if these things are here? What kind of models can you lay down that these things might be living amongst us? The late Mac Tonnies, who I think he came from Kansas City as well. It came from somewhere near you. His posthumous book, The Crypto-Terrestrials, suggested something similar. Fairy Faith suggests something similar. The Shaver Mystery suggests something similar. My Dream, your childhood desire to dig into the dirt to find these other people. There's a long history, you're absolutely right, of people thinking there might be something somehow right there, right beneath our feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense to me.
Do you think that's scarier than them being from like outer space?
Well, the unknown's scary, but I find anything unknown fascinating. So.
Oh, me too. Me too. How do you think people, what do you think would be scary for the public? Let's rephrase that. Do you think if tomorrow there was an announcement, yes, there are extraterrestrials, here's the giant ship hovering above New York City and we're filming it showing it on CNN and Fox News and everything else, or the government came forward and said, yes, we know we have a crash at Roswell and ETs have been coming here from Zeta Reticula for however long? Or do you think it would be scarier if there was an announcement, living underneath our feet and in the Earth's oceans are non-human but humanoid creatures which are behind behind what we've thought of as extraterrestrial technology? They're the real things behind the flying saucers. What do you think would be harder for people to deal with?
I don't know. This day and age, most people don't even believe the media, so it might take them a while to even go, are they saying what?
Oh, I wouldn't believe either. But yeah. I'm just trying to put. I'm just trying to present the two hypotheses. Like, what would be the scarier for the masses? For most people, would it be scary that ETs were visiting, or that there was a kind of a fairy-like or Shavarian-like, or however you want to think of them, this other species that coexisted next to us on this planet for thousands of years?
I guess it depends on what part of the world they're at, because there's some people that would be completely afraid of the aliens. And then there's some people that are used to those type of creatures, especially with mythology. So they already believe that they exist, so they wouldn't be scared. So I think in America, it might freak people out if there were actually aliens, because we've got enough movies like Independence Day or what is that other one with Tom Cruise in it? War of the Worlds, or what is it?
Yeah, War of the Worlds, the modern adaptation.
Yeah. They might go to that and start thinking that stuff and freak out.
Well, you make a good point. The pump's been primed recently culturally for them to be extraterrestrial. Mm-hmm. But historically, the pump had been primed even more that something like this lived beside us, or again under our feet or under the waters. Like the traditional belief system, for every ancient story of star brothers coming down from the heavens, which the ET people always get excited about when they find some example in Native American folklore talking about, there are far more stories about things just living here, you know what I mean, like under the hills in Ireland, or beneath the earth, wherever. That's a far more common folkloric narrative.
Yeah.
It's not anymore. You're right. The new folkloric narrative is the non-human humanoids are from the stars. Well, the old folkloric narrative was the non-human humanoids are living right next to us, or separated by a very thin veil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the fourth dimension. Like I even sent you a video about that. That one kid explaining it, and it is fascinating because we don't, even though we're in a third dimension. I think what was it? We don't even look at things in a third dimension. Anyways, we look at it as a second dimension or how we view things. So if you're in a fourth dimension, then you can actually see through everything. Like there's no, you see through the walls, you can see through. So they're able to view us, but we can't view them. So I don't know. It is very interesting.
Yeah, like the idea that if there was a two-dimensional intelligence, like if something lived in a two-dimension, just like even a piece of paper is really three-dimensional, because there is a kind of a width to it, even though it might be a millimeter or whatever. But the idea of, we can imagine what a two-dimension is, just, length and, I don't know, breadth, and then there may be, let's forget width altogether, but just that. And if my hand went through that two-dimensional world, they'd never see my whole hand. They'd see like 5 prongs coming down, and then they'd see what's the palm. It would be just this big kind of ovally thing, and then there'd be a long, cylinder like my elbow. They would never see the whole thing because they can only see 2 dimensions. So maybe when we see something from elsewhere, we're not even perceiving what its reality is. We're just perceiving how it impacts our reality.
Well, that's the same thing with the paranormal. When people see ghosts and apparitions, you never see the full body. Sometimes you don't even see legs. Sometimes you'll see a floating head. So it's just whatever's pierced the veil is what we get to see. So it is pretty freaky. A lot of people all freak out. And that's something I have to remind myself. If I see something that doesn't make sense, I have to kind of stop myself and say, just wait a minute. You're just not absorbing it yet. Like give it a second and don't freak yourself out. And we even talked about that last week. So last week with
Justin Skilling. Yeah, he was a great guest.
Yeah, and so he even talked about seeing something too that would just peer out, his parents' bedroom door. So, and I've experienced weird stuff like that too, just seeing things just a little bit and not knowing what it is. So.
But you used to be scared when you were little, but I just guess you had so many experiences.
Yeah, I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of the dark. I mean, I would see things in the hallway door. Like I would always have to have my door open, and I had a thing where there was no way I was going to sleep with my back towards the door. It just was not going to happen. And now I don't care. It doesn't bother me now. I have to make sure my door's shut. I don't like to sleep with the door open anymore. When I was a kid, it had to be open. Now I don't want it open. That way I can hear it if the door opens.
I understand.
I understand.
No, I do. I told you, I've told you my home invasion story when I was in Sydney, right? Where I was asleep late in the afternoon. Those were the days where I was far more athletic. I used to lift weights and train. I was having basically an afternoon nap. It was in my college days, resting my muscles. And somebody opened my door, and I thought it was a friend at first, and he yelled abuse at them. "What are you doing waking me up?" And then they slammed the door, and I realized there was somebody, like it's a home invasion. So I don't like the idea. And it was only because I used to, this is how paranoid I was, I guess. I don't know. I was in my 20s or something. I had a chair in front of the door because there was no lock on it. I don't do that anymore, but I used to put a chair in front of my door. It's only because he opened it and hit the chair, because I had a big fan. It was summer in Sydney, so I had this fan going. I didn't have central AC. Almost nobody has central AC in Sydney. I wouldn't even have heard him because the fan was like a white noise. It was only that chair that made me pop up because he pushed against the chair. But that wasn't paranormal. But anything entering one's room when somebody's sleeping, it's a terrifying thing.
You want to be able to hear it. Even I do the same thing too. I have to have white noise. So my fan's on full blast, so it's got to make quite a bit of noise to get my attention anyways. But I'm so used to hearing little noises that I want to sleep through them because I'm just so used to it. But I like to keep the door shut. And I have 3, I have 4 doors in my bedroom. It's ridiculous. So they all are shut. And then I have a mirror in my room. I wish I didn't, but I have a big one. And then my makeup mirror faces it. So at nighttime, something always tells me, turn the other mirror up, because I don't want the mirrors facing each other. Because I don't want like a vortex or portal, whatever. So I'll turn it up, and then I'll probably put something over it. And I don't know. Those are things I have to do now to make sure nothing's going through. Because I think doors are portals. Like even when you see the metaphor or anything like that, where you see like a door in the middle of the woods, it's not just a door in the middle of the woods. That's most likely like a portal. So yeah, I take it a little too seriously with doorways.
No, I understand. And speaking, perhaps.
Well, yeah.
No, you go.
It just made me think of the Fae, because there's a group of them that supposedly stay in the doorways. And you don't ever stand in the middle of a door, because that's where their world is.
Huh.
Yeah.
I was about to tell a fairy story as well, again an Eddie Lenihan story, about how you're not meant to build your house in Ireland on a fairy route, which is between two fairy forts. Mm-hmm. And somebody in one of Eddie's stories did, and they'd wake up every night with this incredibly loud noise, like things just like banging, and they'd run downstairs, there'd be nothing there. And eventually somebody came and said, no, look, there's a fort up there, and look down there, there's a fort there, and you've built your house right in the middle of the line between the forts. The fairies are going back and forth every night between their locations. So then they had to, I don't know if they made as separate doors which lined up, or they just opened the front and the back door. But for whatever reason, they would have doors which would open and let the fairies through, and there was no more being awoken or disturbed. The fairies would just go through the house then.
Huh.
We have to have Eddie Lenihan on. That's got to be like the must do this year. He's such a nice man. He was very kind and grateful, and he's one of my favorite authors. So we need to get him on this year for sure. That'd be fun. Yeah. So do you have any farewell for this St. Patrick's Day for our lovely audience?
Anything farewell, like a farewell story, or?
Yeah, anything.
We're not going for the ending, are we? What time is it? Already?
We're almost done an hour. Yeah, it's like 57 minutes. That's why I gave you a chance to say, like, if you had anything you wanted to say at the end.
I don't know. I guess just, pay attention to your surroundings. I don't know.
That's good advice.
When it comes to the fae folk.
Yeah, you should. If it was a Halloween show, I could say something far more menacing than, on St. Patrick's Day. Like, if you've got elf shot, keep it close, or keep the pumpkins burning or something.
I think you've done that before.
I know that I've done that before. But on St. Patrick's Day, this is a time where those pagan traditions were chased out of Ireland. So perhaps maybe it's the one day on the Irish calendar you don't have to worry about those older stories.
Maybe.
I don't know if that's comforting or sad.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm torn, to be honest.
You're torn.
Yes, because I'm a Christian, but I also love the old stories of the fair folk. Yeah. So what can you say? I guess you can't really say anything, but thank you everybody for spending some of your St. Patrick's Day weekend with us. If you're watching or listening afterwards, thank you for spending whatever time you did with us. And I guess from me, all I can really say is keep it weird.
Keep it weird.